Okay, so my voice didn't record, so I'm going to narrate this as I see what I'm doing. So that's Photoshop. I went to import video files to layers, I think it says. Okay. You move the toggle to where you want to get your video. Hit play to hear it, make sure it's in the right place, and then hit OK and continue. You probably know all that already. Okay. Then you resize the image. Typically for Tumblr, it's 245 for width or 500 for the larger ones. Okay, so once it's resized, you highlight all the frames by holding down Shift on the first one, using the scroll bar to the last one, and then hit Other, and make it 0.06 is typically the speed that I use. Okay, so then you go to the right, and you scroll up to the top layer, and when you start adding your colors and everything, you go to the top one to make sure that all adjustments will be applied to all the layers and frames under that one. Typically what I use for my coloring is, oh, then I went and I deleted all the frames that I didn't want, and then I also deleted the layers the same way on the right. The layer that's highlighted, the frame that's highlighted will have the little eyeball next to it. I'm sure you probably know all this stuff. Okay. Typically the coloring that I use is I stick with the brightness and contrast. And I just kind of play with it. Levels has to do with the brightness. Curves has to do with the brightness. I do vibrance. I like my GIFs to be vibrant and bright typically. Sometimes I do hue saturation, color balance. I do use color balance. But honestly, I just kind of play around with it and toggle things and see how it looks. I have no real rhyme or reason for it. Selection color I do use. Again, I just kind of play with it and see how I like it. And once in a while I'll use gradient map. I'm sure if you want to use that, you can probably find a tutorial that's better than what I can show you, because I don't really use it all that often. But you find one, you make one that you like, and then you do on the right where it says normal, I change it to soft light, so it's kind of like undertone, and then I play with the opacity and the fill to see if I like it, get it how I want it. And you can see that it's not applied to all the frames. Solid color is the same way. Sometimes I do solid color, but all the things are the same way down there. You see that it's not on all the frames, so what you have to do is you go to where it says Unify, and you click the little pin and the little F thing. The pin is to the position, and then the F thing is to apply the coloring. If you want to group all your colorings into one folder, I hit the little folder, and then I highlight all of them and drag them into the group. So that way they're, you know, all together easily. If I wanted one frame, like a darker frame, to have a little bit more brightness than the other ones, I could just adjust it just to that, and then leave it out of the group maybe, and make sure that the ones I don't want to have that brightness with, or whatever it is, I highlight the frames and then click the little eyeball on the right so that you can't see it. It's not, doesn't apply to those. Now, I already have colorings that I like to use, so that's the one I used yesterday. So if I wanted to use the same coloring, what I would do is I drag it so it's side by side. I click the other one, I hit group, and I delete it. And then I drag, make sure the top layer is selected, and then I drag over the group, like that, and then it's applied to it. And then I also drag over the text. So that's how I get my text to be in the same spot from one set to another. If the GIFs are the same size exactly, then it will go into the same place. Okay. Now, if I'm making a whole set from one, so that I've imported that file and it's like 500 frames. So typically what I use would be typically around 85 frames. So anywhere, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the coloring and what's in the picture and everything. So I'm just changing, it looks like, okay, yeah, I was just changing the text for that one purpose. Okay. So then when I get to about how many frames I think it should, you know, I want it to be, I go to image and I hit duplicate. Okay. And then I go back to my first one and I delete, I think it was on 85, all the extra frames. So there's 84 frames there. So I go to file and I click save for web just to see if it's going to be under the 2 megabyte limit. So it's kind of close to it. So once I know I do sharpening and everything, it's going to be take up more space. So I hit cancel, and I might just want to delete a few extra frames just so that I know that it's going to be enough. It's going to fit. Okay. So I go over there, and then I convert to timeline. And then I go over to the right, and I delete all the frames that don't have the eye next to it. Because when you save it with all those frames, it's going to take up a lot of space. So then I go to filter, convert to smart filters, filter, sharpen, smart sharpen. So typically I use 100, just those settings that you see there, anywhere from 100 to 500. For Friends, it's already Blu-ray quality, so I use 100. Then I go to File, Save for Web. Okay, and it looks like it fit in the file limit. If it's 199 or higher, I go up there to where it says colors, and I might change it to just try a little smaller number until I get it to fit within the limit. I get as close to 256 as I can. If it was over the limit and you want to delete some frames instead versus going back to quality, you go up to the history, you go up, you go to where it's, you know, your history to where you were before you converted to smart filters. Go back, delete a couple extra frames, delete them on the right at the same time, and then just go back and do that process again. You don't want to delete any frames that, or any layers that you didn't delete the frame for, or vice versa. But by that point, even if you're not using them, they all will have the eye now. So then I go back, do the same process, highlight all of them, convert for smart filters, smart sharpen, and save it. Make sure looping options you click forever. And that's it. Now, I think here's when I showed extra text. Okay, so now I did the one, so I go over and I delete for my second one all the frames before that. Okay, now if I wanted to have text of 2 different colors, each text box can only have one style. So I would put that one on top, I would duplicate the text layer, go to my new one, just hit enter so it's underneath, and then I'd go over to the right where it says, I type what it's supposed to say. So I have Chandler's line and then I have this guy's line. I go to styles and I'd click what I want the second one to be. Okay, but it's 2 separate boxes. That's just the settings I usually use. Color overlay, drop shadow, and whatever the other one was. Now, if I wanted I think this is where I said, if I wanted the words to be next to each other and be 2 different colors, I would go back. So I have my first text box, and I would type the entire thing. So not only what Chandler says, but also what this other guy says. Then I would duplicate that layer. I would change the color of it. And then I would just erase all the words that Chandler says. So it only says test 2 because that's the only words I want to be white. And then I just use tab and space and the sizing options on the font to make sure that it completely covers the yellow. And then I can't see any of the yellow underneath the white text. I don't know what I was doing here. I guess I was doing the same thing. Duplicating layer and deleting the extra frames so I can keep going until I use all 500 frames or however many of the scene, that I wanted. Sometimes the text won't go into the same place on all the frames, so just use those same things with the Unify to make sure that it's on everywhere where you want it to be. On all the different frames. I guess that was it.